All right, guys, so we're starting up our last session for the day. And this is sort of continuation of the session that Sam had around collection for Kubernetes. This is around how do you do correlations using your logs and metrics. And we have Abhi, who was here earlier. He's one of the PMs. And then we have Adam, who's our engineering managers. So I'll give the stage to these guys, and they can start.
Thanks, Angad. So we're going to begin with a quick question before we dig in. How many of you use Sumo today for both your logs and your metrics? If you could raise your hands. Perfect. If you do use, I hope you'll be able to use this talk to understand how the power of both of those things inside of Sumo together helps you solve problems faster. And for those of you not sending that data to Sumo today, I hope you'll be able to appreciate how having it in one place really does help you troubleshoot faster. With that, let's get the party started. My name's Abhi. I'm a technical product manager here at Sumo, and with me on stage here is Adam. He's an engineering manager at Sumo. The three things I hope you'll learn from this talk is that troubleshooting truly requires logs and metrics, as I just mentioned in the question itself. Secondly, once you have metadata that acts as a glue, you're able to stitch across these data streams very effectively, which eventually yields easier correlation inside of Sumo logic. The story I hope you've really internalized by this point is that operating Kubernetes is really, really hard and can get very, very difficult. Here's the story we've been kind of talking about throughout various talks today. How SREs have to go from an alert all the way down to kernel level networking at times when times get tough on Kubernetes clusters. Operating them is a non-trivial task. We routinely see customers who tell us they have to go through a variety of different applications, data streams, lots of different mental models to go figure out what's going on inside of their Kubernetes clusters. It's a lot of translating. You're always translating across these data streams, from your logs to your events to your Prometheus metrics. You're constantly making the shift from one language to the next. If it's in Prometheus, you're doing that Prometheus style metric with its own custom labels. You're transferring that into your log system of choice. For Sumo logic, you might be writing your own source categories, etc. That translation requires mental effort. And then you have another one to events itself. This requires you to spend a lot of cognitive overload actually digging through and understanding how to do those translations. This is kind of like asking the question, what would happen if Adam spoke Polish and I spoke Hindi? How many of you would be able to understand what we were saying? And on top of that, you'd have to do the translation to whatever your own internal language is. So now you have three languages at play that you're playing between in order to figure out what's going on and what's being said. That sounds like a really hard talk to attend. So I'm going to hand it off to Adam here. He's going to talk a little bit about how we can make data streams work together inside of Sumo logic.
So, continuing Abhi's analogy about the languages, common language not only allows you to understand each other, but also to cooperate. As we are cooperating right now, like standing on this particular stage and like talking all to you. And this is exactly what you would like to have in your monitoring and troubleshooting platform. So you would like to have logs and metrics to cooperate and help you to investigate some kind of critical situations in your production systems. So you can actually bring them back to get within your SLOs as fast as possible. So let's try to do this kind of like a mental exercise and try to figure out what could be the language, what could be the shared language between logs and metrics. So the languages in this world are actually metadata. So far at Sumo, we had logs with their own metadata sets and metrics with their own metadata, and these two sets were overlapping. But their intersection was fairly small, mostly about some built-in Sumo fields or dimensions like source category, source host, and source ID. This pretty much is similar to having words like television. Probably everybody around the world understands them. So, as I mentioned, talking in different languages when you are trying to troubleshoot your production was pretty difficult because you had to do a lot of like different translations between your tagging systems, the way how you actually label your data. And like this is like also about like both logs, events, and metrics. So we want to actually avoid these kind of situations and build one platform which you can leverage to actually seamlessly find value in. So for the presentations, the common language is English, right? We are using it here. What would be the common language for metadata? Actually, it turns out that it would be domain metadata. So the things which you already have, you have them like in AWS tags, Kubernetes labels, or starting from today, you can have also at the source or collector level settings with your custom fields. And all of this is going to help you to do easy pivots between both data streams and also to find some correlations between them and discover the signals which you already have but you are not aware of. So if we had done this kind of like exercise and we understand what actually is, what kind of like value does a common language give us, we can have a look how does it look like in practice. So now when we are empowered with a common language, what happens is that when you push Kubernetes events, application logs, and metrics to Sumo platform, we are, as Sam was talking earlier, unifying them through the collection. So our metadata agent is doing an data enrichment on the fly as the data are coming.
Thanks, Adam. Let's break this down in terms of what does it allow us to do. Now that you have these common ways of describing these objects, you've effectively got these common entity patterns across these two data streams. Namespace equals night means something inside of Sumo for your event stream, your log stream, and your metric stream. You're able to reference that Kubernetes object, pod equals Hoover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and extract the value from your metrics, events, and logs consistently across those three. That means when you're going through that complex troubleshooting process, you're not worried about doing that translation, about parsing 2 different languages, 3 different languages, potentially more. You're focused on just finding your entities, finding the data underneath them, and analyzing that data. It's about the analysis, not about the translations. No translations required once you have common entity patterns across both. So let's go take a look at what this means inside of Sumo logic. This means we can do things like these pivots from metrics to logs, where we now have this common entity. With this honeycomb structure, you're able to find the object that you want to go consider because it's in a bad state or a good state, and you're able to drill down into the logs that underlie that object to understand what's going on at that actual application level from that metric stream. That's only possible because we have that common metadata to stitch those two things together. Furthermore, we can take these entities as these disorganized sets and organize them into hierarchies and mental models that make sense for your troubleshooting and monitoring needs. This allows you to create systems like cluster to service to pod, or your namespace and deployment and node systems that you heard Frank and others talk about earlier today. Once you have these systems, you now have a pathway to go understand, dissect, and subset your systems. And for each and every layer, you can connect dashboards to them to give you visibility about every component and see what it's actually doing and what its state is. Let's see how this manifests itself inside of Sumo as well. Here we have the Explore tab that we've been talking about today. What you see on the left-hand side is that actual cluster object, and inside of those clusters, you have your namespaces, inside of those namespaces, the pods, and you're starting to see the unwrapping of that mental model. This enables you to start subsetting your problem from that highest level down to that smallest level. And as you click through these objects and try to understand what's going on at that level, you're able to see on the right-hand side detailed observability about what's going on for that object in that portion of your stack. With that, I hope you're able to take the following key takeaways away from this talk. That troubleshooting really does require logs and metrics. That once you have metadata as a glue, you're able to actually make those two data streams work together. And that now that we have that inside of Sumo, you're able to get easier correlation, easier pivots, and therefore faster troubleshooting with Sumo logic. Thank you so much.
All right, with that, we'll open the floor for questions.
So on top of both of those, can we get distributed tracing for next year?
That is a great question, and I'll leave it at that.
So that Explorer view that we saw during the keynote, that's Kubernetes, right? Is that going to incorporate any other like unique sources? And
One of our plans going forward here is to actually expand that Explorer view beyond just Kubernetes, so you can do it for custom topologies in your custom environments, specifically because we know not everyone's on Kubernetes, and those who are often running polyglot environments, which incorporate parts that are not Kubernetes, that they also need to be able to visualize and subset. So it's coming very soon.
And like we would like to invite you like to tomorrow's keynote and Christian's and Bruno's presentation. Like you might learn more about this.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.